Good morning. I want to say a huge thank you to Louise. Talk about setting the bar high for the start of the day. I'm also going to behave and I'm going to try and stick to my notes because I've got a topic that I could do an MSc on and I've got 20 minutes. So the only way, because I'm so passionate about this, is to try and keep to my notes so that I don't go over and mess up the next person. So apologies for that. So also, Louise, thank you for sorting out the tech before I get up because I am a bit not tech savvy. Who am I? I'm Suzanne. You'll hear from my accent. I come originally from the UK. I arrived here 15 years ago into an academic role as an associate professor in health and social sciences. The only reason that is relevant is to say I'm a bit geeky, so apologies. So I love research. I love writing. I've written a few books. My latest ones are up on there. My latest baby last year was the Ultimate Gratitude Journal, written out of a need. I lost my house in a house fire. And Sarah, who I wrote it with, her husband has died of lung cancer since writing the book, but he had already been diagnosed. We looked for all the research in how can we get through this in a healthy, upbeat way while being realistic and feeling what we're going through, and we couldn't find it. So we created it and we wrote it up. So that's just to kind of say I do rely on the research behind what I do. Nothing is in my toolbox that hasn't got a research evidence behind it. And I'm sorry, Louise, I didn't put my hand up and say I don't fit any of those categories. I'm not a counsellor. I'm not a psychotherapist. I'm not a psychologist. I'm a neuroscience-based coach. And I was lucky enough this last year to be awarded, I don't know how they measured it, but somehow, apparently, I got an award for being the best neuroscience-based coach provider in New Zealand. So I don't know how they did it, but I'll have it. Thanks very much. It's great for my marketing. So it gives you a bit of an idea of my background. I'm also human. I'm married, 36 years married, 2 beautiful kids. I often forget to say that, but they're really important, aren't they, in terms of how we connect and who we are. So I'm trying to remember to mention them each time I speak. In terms of today, I was given the title of, can the body talk? Now, I've kind of already given away my bias. My answer to that's yes. I'm hoping to get you curious and persuade you a little bit about that today. I want to share just some of the other theories that underpin it. It's not my opinion. It's not that I'm sitting here saying this. There's some really well-established theories that we can draw on for this. And as I say, really what I want you to walk away with is some curiosity of going, really? Can we? Can I use that in my practice? I believe and I love AI and I agree with everything you've said. And at the moment, I wasn't sitting down or standing up completely. I was in that kind of halfway mark. Because I think we do offer something when we sit with another human being and genuinely connect with them that at the moment, AI can't quite provide. Might be in the future, but I'm not sure that they can yet. And this is all in 20 minutes, so I'm going to get on. Neuro. Anyone heard, anyone not heard of the term neuro? It's sexy language at the moment. Neuroscience. I even titled myself Neuroscience-Based Coach. How arrogant. However, it's often misused. And what does neuro actually mean? Where's neuro? If you're coaching, counselling, therapying, if that's a word, to neuro, is it head? Is it body? Actually, we have neurology right throughout our whole body. And yet many of the people I've learnt with as neuroscience, we act as if we haven't got anything below the neck. This is an image. It's actually from a paper in 2019. It was a scan to show decision-making, wait for it, 11 seconds prior to being consciously aware of the decision. That's interesting, isn't it? So if the decision's already been made, where was that done? In fact, in one Australian study, they used it to predict decisions that you're going to make. And they were over 90% accurate each time. So, maybe the body's involved. Maybe. This is from the field of embraining. What if we had complex adaptive neural networks, aka brains, in other parts of the body? And this is not embraining saying this is the science literature. There's a set of criteria that have to be met in order to be called a brain, and the heart and the gut are already known in science as brains. We use 3 at our lowest level of training and 5 at Master Coach. You can get curious about what the other 2 might be. I'm not going to tell you because I want to leave you curious and looking us up. For the last 7 years, I've also been designing and researching a psychometric tool to help people measure which brains they use in decision making. It's been written up in Sage because I'm a geek. It's in an Impact Factor journal. It's also been written up in that book as Chapter 10, and that will go live this year. So decision making being made outside the head, that's interesting, and we've shown it's valid and reliable. And I suspect already some of your amazingly intelligent heads are going off on a conversation internally, asking all sorts of questions. I would be if I was sat out there and I'd heard it for the first time. So we're experiencing something in the body that is way more powerful than often we give ourselves credit for, and it's way more powerful than just listening. I'm going to also get you just to play with me for a moment. Just put your pens down and think about somebody or something that you dearly, dearly love. Maybe it's a partner, child, parent, a friend, a cat, a dog, I don't mind what. And imagine that person is right in front of you and you're connecting with it. You're looking in their eyes. You're feeling that love. Just take the palm of your right hand and put on your body where you're feeling that. Now, I've done this in rooms of hundreds of people, and it's amazing you've all just repeated the results. Nobody went, oh, in my limbic system. Okay, so there's maybe something else that's going on prior to the head brain then interpreting what's happening. Okay, so in embraining, we talk about specific prime functions and competencies of those brains. We talk about getting them aligned, and when they're aligned, then we move forward in flow and in wisdom. We access our inner wisdom. Have you ever had a client say something like, my head says one thing, but my heart says another? It's just an indication of some of the language of where it shows up. So, of course, I'm biased because this is a large part of what I do. It's the name of my business. I'm one of 2 master trainers of embraining in the world. So, obviously, I'm going to focus on that as one of the models. The reason is my geeky underpinning. It all comes from research. It's not just opinion. Some of the other theories you probably have heard of and possibly use. Maybe you use all of them, maybe you've got 1 or 2. And I don't want to go too much through all of them because you'll be expert in these more than me, probably. Polyvagal's one of my favourites. The work of Deb Dana, taking it into therapy, has just revolutionised how I coach people. And my coaching practice is largely around stress and anxiety. So to help people regulate their nervous system, to take back control of something that maybe they thought was outside of their, ability to have, to be able to play with and to have effect on. So polyvagal, it's not new, it's 30 years old, but it really is coming to its own at the moment and becoming incredibly popular. So if you haven't heard of that, do go and stalk Stephen Porges, the developer, or Deb Dana. They have beautiful YouTube clips that you will get on them. I also recently came across a lady called Jan Winnall. I don't know if you've heard of her. Her book's at the bottom on the right-hand side. And she's kind of pulled together polyvagal theory with Gendlin's work on felt sense. And it's a really, really good book. I've just finished it. It's all related to addictions. If you're working at all with addictions, it's well worth a read. Okay, what else do we have? Embodied cognition. No way you won't have heard of it, and you've probably heard of some of the main authors around it. George Lakoff, Mark Johnson, their book, The Philosophy in the Flesh. Humberto Maturana, the guy that said we're not human beings, we're human becomings. Antonio Damasio, and I'm sure you know many others. So there's a whole field of embodied cognition that sits behind this as well, which then taps into some of the psychosensory techniques that we use, like, anyone recognize this one? Havening, tapping. Some of the body work that literally we're using that to change the neural wiring. Interpersonal neurobiology, Dan Siegel's work. Again, lots of other authors align with that work as well, but it looks wider than us. So there's me, but I don't exist in isolation. I exist in environment. I exist in society and connection to others. The whole field of quantum and spiritual starts to become part of it. Embraining, I've already alluded to. Grant Suselu and Marvin Oka are the 2 main names of that. and the felt sense Gendlin works, which is quite old now. But as I say, Jan Winall has just kind of revitalised that by combining it with polyvagal. Curious, anyone align with any of these? Use them already? Yeah, fairly popular, not so popular. Okay, well, there's some more curiosity for you to do. Go and stalk them and look them up. Underpinning all of them, I believe, is the concept of neuroplasticity. Because if we couldn't change the neural wiring, why would we bother? And the fact that we can go in and change patterns, we're human patterning systems. And what we want to do is disrupt unresourceful patterns and introduce new ones. So I think that underpins all of those theories. And if you're looking for where's my evidence behind what I say, go and look up some of these theories. So how does the body talk then? It hasn't got a Broca's area. It hasn't got a language centre in the same way that the head brain has. So if we're going to start to coach to, do therapy with, change neuroplasticity in, how do we talk to the heart? How do we talk to the gut? How does your gut and heart talk to you? Anyone want to shout out any ideas? Pain, yeah, so pain and any sensation in the body could well be a communication from. I love the acronym for pain, or the acronym I use, there's probably several, but pay attention to information now. Like that one? Can I have that one? There you go. Anyone else? How do you know? You just know, right? You just know. Maybe you've gone and bought a house, and you just know it's the right house for you. Your gut's not going, oh yeah, it's a great price, let's analyse the CV. No, that's your head. How's your gut talking to you? Interesting, isn't it? We're all using it on a daily basis, and yet we're not taught to interact with, well, things like images, sensations we've already said, metaphor, quick, simple words, like language of a 5-6-year-old, not an academic geek, are some of the ways that it will come up. And how do we get that out? Things like art therapy, IDT, are a great way of putting that on the page where you don't have to rely on language, and it's why I love having IDT in my toolbox. So I'm sure you've seen some of the research about where we feel emotions in the body, and we know that energy goes beyond the skin surface. In fact, through the work of HeartMath, we can pick up the electromagnetic radiation of the heart around 9 feet away from you. So how I'm feeling, I'm guessing you guys at the front are about 9 feet. If I changed what emotion I was feeling, you would sense it. You might not recognize exactly how, but you would sense it. Ever been in a nice, quiet, peaceful room, just doing your own thing, all neutral? Someone comes in, ranting. You can feel it before they say anything, right? That's your electromagnetic radiation at heart level. So this is the level of which we are working now with the body. Again, it gives away my bias. Can the body talk? Yes, of course it can. We've just got to learn how to listen and how to understand. If you're familiar with polyvagal, you might know about the polyvagal ladder. This is my version of the polyvagal ladder. It's been a little bit adapted and tweaked because I'm geeky like that. And because for me, I think there are some subtle differences that the original ladder doesn't necessarily take on board. It doesn't work for my clients fully, so I use it. If anybody wants this or the worksheets that go with it, feel free, just email me and I'll happily share it with you. One of the differences around this for me is if we just look at each of the levels, but particularly that middle one, in the original ladder, there's 3 steps, and you go up or down because it's a hierarchy. For me, I've got 2 flavours in each step. So if you look in the middle one, great one to kind of feel into, remember a time, only don't jump in there full body, but just dip your toe into a time when you remember being pushed or triggered into a fight mode. Now, I'm not talking slapping someone around the face, right? You might have done. I don't need to know about that. It might be that you've had to stand up for yourself. You've had to take action on something. You've had to have a strong argument. As you imagine that, what happens in your body? Now you can see what happened to mine. My body was talking before I was. There's a slight forward movement for me. There's definitely muscle tension. And my hands, although I've never hit anyone in my life, kind of go into almost a fist. If I compare that with the other sympathetic response, which is flight, I disconnect, I turn away, and I'll probably put some barrier between you and me. So for me, listening to the body and knowing where it goes up and down the ladder is really key, because if I'm aware, I can assess whether or not it's resourceful or not, because sometimes it might be. And then I can interact and do interventions. So I offer interventions across all of these with clients, and we can get really creative with it. So non-language, how does it show up? Well, it might show up as something as simple as colour. What colour is top of the ladder for you when the world's okay, you're safe, you're happy, you're content? What is it when you've really pulled away and life's just too tough and hopeless, helpless, withdrawn at the bottom of the ladder? So this was actually my, as part of my training, we had to do this. We were told to go and draw an animal for each level. I can't draw to save my life. I can't sing to save my life either, which is why I don't start with singing. But I could go and find pictures that resonated with what my body was saying and then add words to it, because I'm quite head-based, so words are important to me. But you could almost look at each of those and just get the feel for where I was at in the different levels of the ladder. So there's all sorts of creative ways you can do it. Had a lovely 22-year-old client, had psychotic incidents. She was now under both mental health and myself in parallel to try to get her out of, she was already coming out, but back into normal life, university. She was learning computer graphic art at uni. So when I said to her, I'd like you to go away and draw me your levels, she came up with the most gorgeous, and with her permission, I share them, graphic art of each of those levels. However, I went, you're going to have to explain them to me. Great conversation in coaching, because I didn't quite get it. I can get this one at the left-hand side as ventral vagal, walking down the street, confident, and I can totally get the black one as dorsal vagal. The ones in the middle I wasn't quite getting. And she explained she had two versions of sympathetic. One was chaotic and one was sensitivity. One was kind of resourceful, one was not. This was before I'd split my ladder into two. And it was one of the clients for why I looked again at that ladder and went, maybe it's a bit too simplistic, maybe in the reality, and of course we haven't even talked about blended states. So I hope that I've given you a kind of sense of, does the body talk? Yes, it does. And sometimes we won't be with somebody in person. So for all of my clients, they are welcome to email me in between sessions. It's not a great business model, but it keeps me connected. And one of a 22-year-old guy wrote me these slips within a longer email. So I've just pulled out some quotes from it. And you can even tell in the languaging of that what state the person's in. So as you read it through, if I read one of them, I think I may have mentioned worrying about being stared at university, which has created a chronic hypervigilance when I'm attending. What state is that? Where is he on the ladder? Anyone? Hypervigilance? Worrying?
Sympathetic.
Yeah, he's right in the middle, right? So he's not up there feeling safe, where he can easily connect and not worry. He's hypervigilant. My animal, if I go back, and I'm not going to go back because I don't want to mess up the slides working, but if you remember, my animal for the middle was the meerkat, right? The one on the top of the rock, keeping watch for everyone, for the whole tribe. And that's kind of what he's describing, the hypervigilance. Another one of his, I know the truth. It somehow means F all. Sorry for the language, I did actually take it out, but he gave the full word. And the stress response and worrying about others' opinion seems to always prevail. I don't get it. For the last 4 days, my gut, brain and emotions have gone offline. I'm feeling far more stressed overall due to the feeling more unsafe at home. My stomach gut area feels permanently tighter currently. A little bit harder. I think it's a blended state, maybe dropping between two states. Where is he? Anyone brave enough to shout out? No. So there's an element of sympathetic in there, but there's something in me shouting out that he might be dropping into dorsal vagal. There's a little bit of walking away from the fight that seems to show up. And his last one, I want to stay and resolve everything, which I do believe to be possible. That's a big shift for him. He didn't feel anything was possible when we started. But my brain and body are stuck in the past, heighteningly sensitized. So he absolutely is talking from his body to me in those sessions. If I wasn't taking that on board and working with that, I'd be missing so much information. So again, I am biased. I believe, of course, that we can talk with the body. It takes a little bit of training of how do we recognize it? How do we slow down enough to hear it? Because if we're in fast, rapid head story mode, we kind of almost don't feel the body and hear into the body at all. So I thought it might be useful for you, and I'm happy to share the slides if you want a copy of the slides so you've got these, or you want to take a picture of it, some reflection questions really for you. Where are you already using this and may not even have been aware that you were using somatic and that embodied cognition in the practice that you do? Where could you enhance that even further and keep it safe within your scope of practice, whatever your scope of practice is? So, confession, I'm a coach, I'm not a therapist, and so I have to be a little bit careful with scope of practice. And whenever I work with a few GP practices, they refer me patients, and I make sure that they're being seen in parallel with me, and I know where my limit is, and I will refer on. I have a network of therapists I'll refer on to. But for a lot of people, my argument would be, how do we serve the country's need, is start to look more flexibly, and actually maybe other people like me could help pick up some of those lower level people that don't really need full-on therapy, and we could manage them and get your workload down a bit, but that's a whole nother story. Do I deeply value communication with the body? This is you reflecting for yourself, do you? And how do you talk about that when you describe what you do? So how do you do informed consent? Do you let the client, patient know? Sorry, I use the word patient because I work within GP practices often. How do you let them know that you will be kind of having those conversations? Sometimes I use the word like crazy. Might sound a bit crazy, but talk to me about this. And for yourself, I've had 2 clients this week who have both said they heard what their body was saying and they ignored it, and now they're sick. And they knew they'd heard it, and they ignored it. Do you ever ignore what your body is telling you? We all do, right? So, where can you go and explore it more? Well, go and feel free to stalk me, stalk Steve Porges, stalk Peter Levine's, all the names behind those theories. Go and have a look at those theories. But seriously, if you want to have a conversation with me, feel free to get in touch. And how well do you communicate with your own body? Okay, I hope I have just, in 20 minutes, opened up some curiosity for you about a topic that is core to my heart. I absolutely love working at this level. It's opened up all sorts of opportunities for me, and I hope those reflective questions will help you to go away and take this away. Being geeky, these are some of my favourite books if you want to go and read some books, and I just love The Awkward Yeti, who is a whole cartoon around the body part and head, heart and gut. So that's it. My title today was Working with the Body, Can It Really Talk? I'm sure you will see and hear from my perspective, absolutely, and yes, I recognise I probably have quite a large bias, and I'm all right with that. I'm happy to sit at that side of the fence. So for me, it's a resounding yes. I wonder how you would answer that now, and whether or not listening and getting curious has changed that in any way for you at all. Thank you so much for inviting me to speak and to listen. And I'm sure Louise and I will handle any questions that the panel